And so back we go to my least favorite ship that has ever been constructed, manufactured by probably my least favorite NASA contractor, the Boeing Starliner. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the various snafus that occurred with this thing during its test at the end of last year, including its inability to reach the proper orbit because it thought it was in a different orbit and burned off too much propellant trying to make a correction, the fact that it couldn't communicate with NASA about this particular issue and allow NASA's mission control to make the necessary adjustments so it could enter the proper orbit, and also the separation of the crew and service modules, which was done incorrectly. And by the way, Boeing was less than forthcoming about that, which could have led to the death of a crew had a crew been involved. And by the way, when I call this the final chapter, I'm probably lying. Boeing, I'm sure, is going to do something else to piss me off sometime in the near future. But what really pisses me off right now is the fact that the deeper NASA looked into this situation, the worse the situation got, and the more problems that they found. It turned out to be dozens and dozens of issues, which I'll get into in greater detail later in the video. There it is, our savior, the Starliner. Oh, but it doesn't actually happen except in simulations. So, in any event, Kathy Luters, the Associate Administrator of NASA's Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate, and Steve Stitch, Manager of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, made a statement after Boeing went through correcting all of the issues that came up with their ship, and stated that all was forgiven and they were going to get yet another try at this. And I just can't help but wonder, do we have to keep putting up with this? Keep paying Boeing millions and millions of dollars to fail, or rather billions, and then just let them go on and try again? Or should we be looking at alternatives? Are there alternatives? Why do we need the Starliner? And can we try something else? And that's what I intend to cover in this video in just a few minutes. Hello, and for those of you who missed the live stream event, welcome to a new and improved audio of the Angry Astronaut, and what I hope is the final version or close to the final version. Finally figured out how to get this to work, and thanks to supporters managed to get it functioning, and I hope that this is the final time that we have any real serious issues with audio. Before I go and start slandering Boeing again, I need to update you folks on the state of the future of the channel. And if this is something you folks would prefer to skip, then skip to this point in the listed below and in the video, and you can go ahead and move on to the point of the video itself. All right, for those of you who want to hear more, let's get going. Okay, guys, thanks for hanging out with me, those of you who decided to endure this. Just a quick update, and since this is getting to be a bit serious, I'm just going to go ahead and ditch the persona. Because, come on, let's be serious. This is a persona that we're talking about here. Okay, about a month ago, when I had less than half the subscribers that I do now, I put out an appeal to make this my full-time career. I told my viewers that monetization wasn't going to be enough in order for me to make it at this stage. And since that time, I have monetized, and I'm sorry for these commercials and things that you guys have to deal with at the moment. I don't even know what you have to deal with, to be honest, because I have the premium YouTube, and so I don't even see them myself, to be frank. But in any event, I'm sorry you have to deal with them. But I asked for support at the time on the Patreon level, and to my amazement, a whole bunch of you stepped up to help save this channel, and I got 118 Patreon subscribers, which is a huge step, and this is why I have this microphone. It's why I have improved my set. It's why I have sound reducing panels that I have yet to install. You know, a variety of things to do, and I'll be making further improvements to this channel. I have great ambitions for this channel, and it's also bought me, by the way, another month. I'll be able to make it all the way through the end of August at this stage with the income that I've gotten from you guys and monetization in order to get by. So thank you very much for all of that. I really appreciate it. But things have pretty much ground to a halt, or close to a halt. So I felt I didn't want to really, but I felt I really needed to make one more appeal to let you guys know that if I need to be able to get just a little bit more support. And when I'm talking about a little bit, about less than 5%, 4 to 5% of my subscribers being $5 Patreon members. That's about all I need at this stage in order to be able to make a living. And as time goes on and I have more subscribers and more views, I probably won't even need that many. But if I am to get by, that's essentially what I need. If I don't get that by the end of August, or at least close to that, then most probably I'll re-enter the job market. I've been on unemployment since I was laid off in April, by the way, and instead of being idle, I chose to go full bore into this channel and try to make it into my career. But as a lot of Americans know, the unemployment, at least the bonus unemployment, ends at the end of July. I'm stretching it through to the end of August. And if I'm not where I need to be, I'm going to need to re-enter the job market, which doesn't mean the end of the channel, but it does mean that this is going to become a part-time hobby for me rather than a full-time job. One video a week and maybe one monthly stream. And the Discord benefits and things like that, I'll keep them in place. I just may not be around a whole lot because I'm going to need to go full bore into a full-time career if I'm going to make it. So in any event, that's what I'm looking for. And there are many ways to support me. Either Patreon, I have a merch channel, I have a relationship with Spaceship Mania, many ways to support this channel. And I ask for your help to make the Angry Astronaut a full-time thing for me for the rest of my life. If you're not able to, though, I understand. As I've said before, times are tough, and it's not your responsibility to pay my bills. That's all I have to say. Let's get on with the video. All right, thanks everybody for your patience, whether you watched all of that stuff or not. Let's move on. So, the Starliner, it rears its ugly head once again. At first, when the test flight happened, as most of us know, there was just one failing, one issue that came up. And then there were two. And then there were 61 corrective actions that NASA identified that Boeing would have to institute in order for the Starliner to be safe. And then that number swelled to 80. 80. So, in any event, 80 corrective actions that needed to be taken on a vessel that Boeing said was ready to be human certified. At least from their test flight, as soon as it was successful, the idea was to put a crew on board. As a matter of fact, one of the astronauts even said that she could have handled the situation had she been on board. But she probably couldn't have, now that we've revealed all of the issues that have happened. And by the way, these issues haven't even been revealed to the public because of proprietary issues and security and all that other sort of nonsense that we tend to get exposed to. Not to say that proprietary stuff is nonsense, but still it'd be nice to know something about these 80 corrective issues. So the question is this something that we really need to put up with? I mean, I've been in a lot of competitive technological bids in the decades that I spent selling technology. And if there were that many problems with what I sold somebody, my contract would have been null and void. And yet, NASA is pushing on. Is this simply because we don't have a choice? We've got to have an alternative to the Crew Dragon, otherwise we're left with nothing? Well, I don't think so. I think that there's another alternative, and I'm going to talk to you about that right now. Okay, we're going to briefly talk about this with the cabin shot from inside the Starliner during the botched test. I warn you, a lot of this is pretty boring because I don't think Boeing really knows how to make an entertaining video. There's the cargo, by the way. They show this cargo over and over again as if to reassure people that in spite of the fact that this was all screwed up, your cargo would have been safe. And there's their dummy astronauts. Good thing there weren't real astronauts. There's the cargo again. Anyway, so we had 61 corrective actions to start off with, and then that swelled to 80 by the time NASA looked into it further. And NASA has since admitted that they did not hold Boeing to the same level of perfection that they held SpaceX. They simply assumed that because of their relationship with Boeing, that they were going to do a better job. Plus, they gave them a hell of a lot more money, so one would assume so, right? Now, that's a beautiful view, by the way. Very lovely. Wrong orbit, but a beautiful view. Oh, there's the cargo again, though. We got to show the cargo. So in any event, the statement made by NASA suggests that even though we had all of these issues, there are workarounds. Regarding NASA's inability to communicate with the spacecraft, Steve Stitch said, quote, "As we started to look at the data from the flight and why we didn't get a good forward communication link with the spacecraft, what we found was that the system perhaps allowed a little too big of a band of frequencies to come into the transceiver itself. What Boeing has done to fix that is installing a filter. My question would be, why was this not done in the first place? I mean, communications is one of the basic things that you need to have with the spacecraft, and yet this problem existed and Boeing had no idea that it was there?" And this is really my problem with the whole damn thing. For a vehicle that was supposed to be ready to be human rated, according to NASA, they had 35 corrective actions pertaining to process and operational improvements, 21 corrective actions dealing with testing and simulations, and 17 related to software updates and requirements, and 7 in a category that includes hardware modifications and other organizational changes. 80 corrective actions. And this is for a ship that was supposedly ready. I mean, come on. How is this acceptable? It just isn't. And this happened, in my opinion, because of the long-standing culture of corruption that exists between NASA and their procurement program and Boeing. I mean, Doug Lavero, Luder's predecessor, is currently under investigation for providing unfair competitive information to Boeing for the Lunar Lander project. I mean, how often does this sort of thing happen? And do we really want to continue going forward with a company that has this kind of track record? I say no, and yet we're going to, and we're going to be doing it at a considerable expense. You see, once the Starliner finally does get off the ground and starts carrying human passengers, it's going to be doing it at a rate of $90 million a seat, according to a NASA investigation, as opposed to $55 million a seat for the Crew Dragon. It's crazy. An extra $35 million a seat for transporting astronauts to the ISS on a vehicle that's had this many problems. But is there an alternative? Is there something else that we can do? Now, I know a lot of you realize that this was the direction that I was heading, but hidden away in the nose cones of a variety of different rockets here in the near future is going to be an innovative new type of ship called the Sierra Nevada Dream Chaser. And in my opinion, this is the competition for the Crew Dragon, the alternative that we should have instead of the Starliner. And it's closer to completion than you might think. Now, I don't care if a rocket is reusable or not, it is plain cool when a fairing does that, and that's how the Dream Chaser is designed, to be protected inside the fairing for a variety of reasons, for stability purposes and also for protection from space junk and micrometeoroids. And it also has a number of capabilities that other ships of its class don't. That little pod on the back of the Dream Chaser is called the Shooting Star, and it expands the Dream Chaser's cargo capability to 5,500 kilograms, 5,000 of which can be pressurized. This is actually more than the Crew Dragon can carry, because the new version of the Dragon had to be redesigned to be more aerodynamic to carry a crew. In addition, the Dream Chaser is capable of what's called ISS reboost, which means that it helps keep the station in orbit, which currently only the Soyuz is capable of doing because the Crew Dragon does not have sufficient fuel in order to be able to carry out this particular function. And by the way, the Starliner did have this capability, and that's one of the advantages that it had. But once again, we don't need it if we can use the Dream Chaser. And this is not something that is theoretical. This is something that's going to start delivering cargoes to the ISS in 2021. And the Dream Chaser is also capable of a very gentle re-entry into the atmosphere with only 1.5 G's worth of pressure being exerted on crew and cargo, allowing very sensitive cargoes to be delivered to just about any runway on the planet. And since the ship also uses a very safe type of fuel, the cargo can be unloaded quickly. So the question remains, why did this receive the lowest marks from NASA when the commercial crew program was started, and why did it lose out? It's reusable, it has all kinds of advantages. I don't think it's because the ship was inferior. I think it's because of something else. You see, the Sierra Nevada Corporation was a company that was acquired in 1994 by husband and wife self-made billionaires Fatih Osman and Aaron Osman. Fatih Osman happens to be an aerospace engineer, and they built this company from a 20-employee small space industry into a powerhouse of 4,000 employees and billions of dollars. Sound kind of familiar? And it's this particular type of company that NASA at the time, I think, distrusted, and they were unwilling to try to use a company like this or anything that they produced, and that's why they received such low marks. And by the way, this is not an animation you're watching here. This is a landing test by the Dream Chaser, a Dream Chaser prototype. It does not have a pilot, and watch it come down. It's a thing of beauty. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this ship is superior to the Crew Dragon at all. Because it's using expendable rockets, or mostly expendable rockets like the Vulcan, it's going to be more expensive per seat to put astronauts on it. And by the way, they already have plans on the board to make this into a human-rated ship. But nevertheless, This is something that would doubtlessly be superior to the Starliner, in my opinion. I don't think there's any question at this point, given all the problems the Starliner has had, that this design would prove to be a worthy competitor, and it deserves another chance. Now, does this mean we should trash the Starliner? No. The Starliner should get another shot. As much as I hate to say something like that, for all sense of fairness, they should get another swing at it. But at the same time, since Sierra Nevada has plans of making this into a human-capable vessel anyway, and since it's going to be carrying cargoes, I think that a rebid is very much in order. If we do not, if we just allow the Starliner to continue on in spite of its failings and get another shot without any competition or any rebid, in my opinion, we will perpetuate the entire system of taking advantage of the NASA procurement system and the American taxpayer to the detriment of NASA and anybody who flies aboard this ship. So there you have it. In my opinion, a workable alternative. I'm not saying cut the Starliner out completely, but I'm saying let's rebid this. As I mentioned in the video, we had just one option of getting up to the ISS for nearly a decade, and that was the Soyuz. And we still have the Soyuz, by the way, in case anything happens with the Crew Dragon. Why do we need to keep going forward with this incredibly flawed vessel that even if these 80 corrective actions are taken, are we certain that Boeing isn't going to cut any corners in the process of trying to make a profit on this thing, of all of these measures that they have to implement? Or are they going to convince NASA to give them just a little bit more funding? Because after all, you demanded that we take all of these corrective actions, so we need more money in order to enact those things. I would not be at all surprised because, as we've seen in the video, this has just been business as usual for the government procurement system. The same usual suspects taking advantage of the U.S. government, charging whatever they want and ripping off the American taxpayer, and it has to stop. Boeing has failed in their bid as far as I'm concerned, and at the very least, they need to earn themselves a place back at the table, and Sierra Nevada has earned themselves another opportunity to give this a shot, especially since they're going to be hauling cargoes to the ISS anyway. This is what we should be doing instead of giving Boeing yet another pass. It's unacceptable, and it continues to perpetuate the whole notion of taking advantage of the government procurement system and getting as much money as you want, no matter how many times you screw up. It doesn't work in the corporate world, and it shouldn't work with NASA. But unfortunately, it currently is, and it probably will continue to do so. And in my opinion, Boeing is going to cut the necessary corners in order to make their profit margin on this thing. And as a consequence, at some point, the astronauts on the Starliner are going to be killed. At some point, there is going to be a flight that's going to end in tragedy, just like it did with the shuttle. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. But given the track record of the usual suspects when we're talking about NASA and the corporations that they traditionally deal with, this is what happens, and it needs to stop happening. But until that moment comes, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.